Hi, everyone. Today I have an exciting interview with ASTQA President Randy Rice talking about his experience studying and taking the GenAI exam from ISTQB. Randy, how are you doing?
Hey Christian, I'm great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So, first, could you give us a little background on yourself?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm president of ASTQA at the present time, and I am a software testing consultant and trainer. Been doing that as an independent consultant and trainer for over 35 years now, and have close to 50 years of experience in the field of IT, both in development and testing. Before I got into testing, I was a developer for about a dozen years. And I do this worldwide. I've worked with all kinds of different companies and organizations in improving their processes for software testing as well as training their people in software testing. And I've been on the board of ASTQB for many years before I transitioned onto the board of ASTQA. And so I just generally try to contribute to the profession. I've written two books, Surviving the Top 10 Challenges of Software Testing and Testing Dirty Systems. I co-wrote those with Bill Perry. And I have a new one coming out here very shortly called The Wit and Wisdom of Software Testing. So, yeah, I've been around, done a lot of conference speaking as well over the years. A lot of people may have seen me at conferences over the past uh, 25, 30 years. So that's my short intro. I hold about a dozen certifications. I hold all the advanced certifications from ISTQB, and the main reason that I hold many of those certifications is that I need them to be able to teach them. So it's not like I'm like a certification collector or anything like that.
So, with all this experience, with you teaching courses, with you having all these certifications, your book writing, and then your just other work experience, how did you actually prepare for this ISTQB Gen AI exam? Is it different than most people prepare? Do you prepare less? Do you prepare more? What's your preparation process look like?
Well, this was an interesting one for me, and it really, I think, gave me a lot more empathy for people who are trying to learn new things for the first time. I teach a lot of foundation level courses, and in many of those courses, uh, I have people with experience and some without experience. Well, in my case, for this certification, for the Gen AI certification, I came to it without much experience and very much knowledge of AI. And I'm still on the learning curve, by the way. I think everyone uh, is on the learning curve because everything is changing so rapidly in the field of AI. But to me, it was different because it was just a lot of new information. And the way I prepared for it was just the hard work of reading through the syllabus several times. I was even a reviewer of the syllabus during the beta process of when it came out, and that was for one chapter of the syllabus. So I found myself going through reading, rereading, rereading the syllabus, and like probably every syllabus we have is not the most exciting thing to be reading. Um, and one of the pitfalls of doing that was you're just going based on words on the paper. Okay. And there's a lot of exercises and things that you would get in a course that I didn't have the benefit of on through the syllabus as it stands. But that was my process. Um, I kind of, I've written so many courses and everything. I've generally learned to pick out, what would make a good sample exam question or a good exam question rather. And so there are certain things I see bulleted list, and I would start highlighting and trying to memorize as much as I could, with certainly understanding that you can't memorize the entire syllabus. So that's the challenge. There's a lot of information there, and you just have to become very familiar with it.
I think that a lot of people will actually be glad to hear that with all your experience, all your certifications, even you had to go through, reread the syllabus multiple times to really get that information down. And like you spoke to, I think a lot of people find the courses so valuable because they have a more interactive way rather than sitting at their computer, sitting at their desk, just like you said, highlighting, reading through bulleted lists, trying to memorize as much as they can.
Yeah, and the challenge right now with particular service as it stands at the interview is that there's not many courses out there. Um, so, and I'm definitely not trying to sell a course because I don't have a course. So, it's just one of those things where, I would read through what the exercises were by the learning objectives, and
Mhm.
it's intended to be hands-on exercises. And I would just try to envision look like if I were to try to do them. So, visualization as well as just reading through and trying to grasp what the intent of those learning objectives are. And by the way, the everything is based on learning objectives. For the our audience who have taken ISTQB exam, objectives are very important. All the questions are formed around them. All the course topics are formed around them. Coverage is established based on learning objectives. So it's good to be able to go through the learning objectives and just ask yourself, have you met that learning objective in your own mind? If you were to say, explain such and such, could you actually do that? So that was another part of my process.
Yeah, that's great advice, and you can apply that to every single, like you said, every single ISTQB exam, going through those learning objectives. So, kind of going off of that, like we've touched on, you're a very experienced tester, QA consultant, and instructor who have worked with many testers. And so, given all this perspective, how do you think that a new and a veteran tester can best use Gen AI, the certification, to help in their careers?
Well, the reason that I chose Gen AI was because the certification there for just artificial intelligence. But I felt like generative AI is really the thing that most testers are going to be interacting with the most. And so when it comes to understanding, how AI can help a tester in their day-to-day work, uh, this certification, I think, goes a long ways in doing that, uh, all the way from analyzing requirements and user stories, finding ambiguities, those kind of things, to developing test conditions and test cases and that kind of thing. Now, it doesn't get into specific tools. It doesn't get into specific AI products or anything like that. But as a tester, let's say that I'm very uh, adept at designing test cases. It gives me an idea of maybe how I can reduce that workload a little bit, but or maybe even greatly by applying some of the things that AI can offer. That's one of the big benefits in my mind. It's really like a very intelligent assistant, but it needs
Mhm.
help. Okay, it needs human guidance, and the syllabus gets into that too. The various types of prompts that you can create and how to create them and those kind of things.
So, touching on that, you talk about it being a really helpful tool and how it needs humans. I know that a lot of software testers are worried about this, but do you think that AI will be a tool for testers or entirely replace them?
I think it'll be the former. I think it'll be a tool for testers um, because it takes refinement. Okay, when you create test cases and when you start working with the abilities of generative AI to do things like review requirements and all that, there's there's been a huge gap, okay, in the tools that we've had. up to the point of AI becoming uh, now a really commonly mentioned thing, when it came to the topic of, well, what kind of tool can I use to analyze my requirements? Well, I didn't have a good suggestion for that. Or what kind of tool can I use to generate test cases? I had a few suggestions on that, but nothing as robust as what we have today. So the just the idea of a tester being able to now have some of these tools at their disposal is a really big thing. But the thing about it is, it's like any tool. You don't really sometimes hear AI referred to as a tool, but that's really in essence what it is. Um, it's not going to make the decisions for you. You have to carefully guide the prompting. You have to understand what it is you're looking for. You have to give it context. You have to give it your role. And there's just a lot of things that the humans have to do. And in fact, there's a big role in there in validating what comes back from AI. So you might get this great set of test cases that look good initially, but then you try to run them and maybe they get you 90% there, but not all the way there. So it's still going to take a human to do this. Now, the trick about replacing testers is that I think there's going to be a real issue with what employers are looking for in testers. And I think they're going to be looking for those testers who know how to work with AI versus those who have just kind of ignored it and said, I'm not going to work with it, or I'm afraid of it, or that kind of thing. It's almost the same argument as um, we saw in the past with test automation. Will automation replace testers? Well, no, but it shifts their roles. And I think AI is going to be doing something very similar to that.
I think that people will be glad to hear that you're not saying it's doomsday and testers are going to be done because AI is going to take their jobs. So you talk about employers wanting testers to be able to know to work with AI. Obviously, employers want well-rounded testers. So how do you think that this certification can complement other ISTQB certifications? And does it work with them or replace those skills?
Well, the foundation level gets into four big techniques for designing a test. And so it's very complementary to that. It's things like equivalence partitioning and boundary value analysis and decision tables and state transition uh, testing, all things that AI can help support. So it's very supportive of foundation level, but it's also supportive of any of the certifications like the advanced test analyst or technical test analyst that get into test design. Um, that there's some intersection, I think, with test management, like in report writing and scheduling and test prioritization and those kind of things, and maybe even risk assessment and those kind of things as well. Um, I think what we're seeing, or at least what I'm seeing, is that we have certifications that tell you what you need to do, um, and also how to do it to a great degree. But it's just been a huge manual task in trying to do that. We always ran up against the wall of just effort. How much effort does it take to create all these test cases? And maybe the challenge is going to be once AI returns me a set of test cases, I might wind up with far too many than I can ever really evaluate or execute or anything. And maybe it's going to be my human intelligence that helps me sort out, what should or should not be tested and all of that. But there definitely needs to be a human in the loop, as it said, just to make sure that you're getting the right things. But I think across the board that there's many certifications out there, and probably each and every one you could probably find some room for AI being as an assistant in doing a lot of the things that are discussed in those certifications.
And so, lastly, this is kind of related to you've kind of touched on it in what you just said, but what other ISTQB and ATISQA certifications and micro credentials do you need in this age of AI to stand out as a software tester?
Well, um, certainly foundation level, that's really the basis for everything else, that it gives you the broad understanding. If you don't have that understanding and you go in and you start trying to apply AI, you're not going to be able to be a good judge of what's coming back from AI. So foundation level, for so many reasons, is a critical one. But I would also think that test automation uh, is another big big certification to have. Uh, there's the micro credential from at SQA. That's a really great starting point. It's very practical, and is a great certification to get. There's the advanced test automation certifications from ISTQB that are also helpful in understanding what can be done with test automation and how to architect it and all of those. That there's the ability of generative AI to create test scripts and automated test scripts and all that. But as far as actually building out the framework and coming up with all the things you need to actually run those test cases, there's still going to have to be a human engineer involved to do that. And once again, this is one of the things that I think testers need to be paying attention to, is how do I learn how to do that? And how do I even understand what should be in an architecture and those kind of things. And I think it just raises the bar really overall in the skill sets that testers need to have. We've always said that testers need to become more technical, and I'm always very careful about how I talk about that, because on one hand, yes, we do need to be more technical as testers so that we can engage with not only AI, but developers and other people that are building the software. But we also need to be thinking like a customer and like a user. And so we don't want to get so technical that we forget about how our users and customers actually use the software. And I think that's an important thing too. But it does raise, I think AI is raising the bar. Now, one thing else that I've noticed, in just from a management perspective, is that managers are very quick to, and I'm not talking about test managers, I'm talking about like executive managers and people in those roles. They're very quick to read about something or to hear something on a podcast, or to say, wow, AI is the next big thing. We need to hop on it. We're in an AI arms race, so to speak. You hear that talked about all the time. And if you start listening to the popular media, yes, they're talking about AI. And it's very easy for someone in upper management to say, oh, we need our people to be very skilled in AI. But really, what does that mean? Um, and so in the old days, we used to call it airline magazine syndrome, back when they had airline magazines. I'm dating myself now. But people would read about something at a magazine, or read about something in the trade press somewhere, see a once again see a podcast or whatever, and think that, well, this is the big thing. We need to go after it. Now, I think that there's a kind of a curve to this. I think that the interest level is right now on the increase greatly. I think that will probably eventually kind of start to flatten out to where it doesn't become like the big fire drill that it is right now, where everyone is interested in it and everyone must have it. Eventually, it will become, I believe, like almost like assumed knowledge, where you're expected to know this as just part of your job. And that's the thing that I think testers, the sooner we embrace AI, the better. uh, because it just becomes a part of what we do. It's not going away. Okay, I don't think it's a fad. I think it's going to be something that we always have to be concerned with. And of all the angles that you can look at AI, I think generative AI is the one that's going to benefit testers the most.
That's just some really great insight onto AI and how testers can prepare themselves, and great insight onto the ISTQB generative AI certification. So thank you so much for your time today, Randy.
Well, you're welcome, Christian. And if I could just say one more thing, I would just
Mhm.
encourage people that if I can do it, you can do it. I'm an old dog trying to learn new tricks.
Mhm. Sorry. That's great to hear. Thank you so much, Randy.
Okay. Thank you, Christian. Pleasure
Uh,
talking with you.